I'm here with Minister Katie White for Climate from the UK Government. Nice to see you. How has your COP been so far?
It's been really good, Laura. I mean, look, we're at that point in the week where we don't quite know what the end's going to be, but I'll be honest, I was a little bit nervous coming into this COP. What's it going to be like? How's it going to feel? And it's an incredibly vibrant COP. You know, it's the first time in a few years civil society's back in the room. You know, it's in the heart of the Amazon, something I was a bit nervous about, but actually having nature setting the backdrop is quite dramatic, not physically, because you're either sweating or, you know, getting downpoured on, but it does remind you, like, what's at stake here. There is a different sense here, and there's a lot of momentum, I have to say. A lot of things going on. Now, negotiations, I'll put them to one side because we've got a little time to go, but actually outside of the negotiations, there's a lot of momentum.
And I think that's it, there's so much excitement around this COP, but certainly one of the messages you hear loud and clear, whether it's inside the blue zone, outside in the marches, is about climate finance. I'm just wondering, why is that so important to have climate finance for the countries impacted, and what is the UK's role when it comes to supporting that?
Look, there is some key things that need to happen in order for us to tackle climate change, and one of them is around financing, and it's around unlocking investments and the transition within developing countries. The UK's been a leader on finance, on climate finance. With our international climate summits we had, you know, we've committed to 11.6 billion over 5 years, and I've been in rooms like all week talking about not just what we're doing ourselves, but how we're working with other partners. I've just come out of a forest room. We've been talking about how we've been working with different countries, but also with philanthropists and local groups to make sure that that finance is really unlocking as much impact as we can. And we're getting better and better at doing it, but you're absolutely right. I think that's the rain coming down as we speak, Laura. It's sort of, you can hear it, can't you, over our heads? But finance is absolutely key, but also ambition is going to be really key, and overall, what can we be doing to close that gap? We've reduced the gap since Paris from a 4-degree gap in terms of temperature rise to about a 2.5-degree rise, but that is still too much. So we need to be looking at areas. There's lots of discussion around a fossil fuel roadmap, you know, how we can do other investments, or whether it's on forests or methane to close that gap further. So there is lots of discussion, and I think there's a bit of a symbiotic relationship between all of these different elements, which is what makes it so difficult. But actually, if we can weave it together, you know, the agreement will be stronger.
Yeah, and I mean, almost the opposite of this rain. I know that there's been amazing climate finance projects through Tier Fund, who I'm an ambassador for, who've actually been thinking about droughts in places like Pakistan and getting farmers insurance payouts for when their crops fail. So I think it is vital that we not only get the finance, but we actually understand what that means. But I also know that looking back home, not everyone is maybe as convinced. People are worried about what net zero infrastructure looks like near them, lots of things like renewables. I'm just wondering, as part of your portfolio, you have community engagement. What does good community engagement mean to you for people back home?
You're absolutely right, Laura. You picked up on a few really important issues there, like how do we explain to people what is going on? And in a way, this debate started. Tier Fund was one of the leaders on this like 20, 30 years ago in the mainstream. And we all decided, you know, that we understood what was happening with climate change, we'd set these plans and we carried on. Actually, Britain's done a really good job of delivering on a lot of those plans. I don't think we've done quite as good job in recent years of going back to the communities and saying, this is what we've done, this is where we are now, and this is where we think we should go. And so I see that a lot of my role is around making that explanation of explaining what's happened, because actually people don't know that we've reduced our emissions by such a huge amount whilst growing our economy at the same time. They don't know as well what the impacts are going to be domestically and internationally, whether that's, we've obviously got flooding going on at home right now, but also health impacts, and health impacts not only on humans but also on animals. I was talking to somebody the other day about health, about animal and human health, and they were talking about dogs actually not being very good, and I was like, well, my mum will be absolutely, you know, if this starts affecting Maisie, then it's a whole other level of concern. But in seriousness, you know, these are things that really matter to people, and understanding the implications, but also the opportunity. You know, I went to meet some young people in South London. Oh my goodness, the storms are really coming. I went to meet some young people in Bromley in southeast London because I wanted to figure out, I wanted to speak to some people who were actually training up for a green job. I was like, why are you training up for a green job? What are you interested in? And it was fantastic. They were so energetic. They was young. They were all men, but they were all young men. And they said to me, like, they were, like, we're the future. We want to be part of the future. We want a well-paid job. My uncle was an electrician, and I want to do an electrician in a different way in the next generation. And they were like, and I want to have fun at the same time. And these jobs hit all those buttons, and I came away feeling like really inspired. So I think we need to do a better job doing that. We're going to be launching a public participation plan, but to be honest, there's going to be working as well with lots of groups like Tier Fund, but also churches up and down the country. They do a great job. Community hubs, let's work with people and be like, how can you take advantage of the opportunities? We've launched today in the UK, GB Energy investing in solar panels in schools up and down the UK. That's a great initiative, in terms of it's educational, it's saving money. It's like, I think if we can look at those sort of projects as well as a symbolic way of explaining what the risk is, but also what the opportunity is.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about that, and I look forward to continuing this conversation when we're back home in the UK.
I look forward to it too, and it's fabulous to hear a Glasgow region accent.
Exactly. Woo. Thanks.
Thanks, Laura. Take care.